Okay, you guys, so I wanted to do something different today. I wanted to use some of my scrap fabric. If I showed you my scrap fabric, you'd probably freak out. It's insane the amount that I have. So I decided I was going to create accessories for the ferrets and make them like a quilt using multiple patterns of fleece. So here's the first one I made. This is the top part of whatever I make. I'm not exactly sure what I'm making yet. I'm thinking about making a bed or just a blanket for right now. I actually considered doing a full set of cage-only accessories in something like this. But I'll let you know by the end of this tutorial what this is going to be. Not sure yet. But I also decided that I wanted to do one in anti-pill fleece as well, because that is a blizzard. So, to show you guys how to cut squares where you can do them really quickly like I did in the tutorial, and they're square and it's fast, I'm going to show you guys how I learned to do this. On to the the tutorial. You can do this, normally you would do this with cotton, by the way, or like if you're doing this to make, this is kind of how quilters create quilt squares. But because I want perfect squares and I want them fast, I just decided to do it the same way using fleece. So what I did, for me, you could do it right side out, right side, however, it doesn't matter, they're squares. I'm gonna fold my fabric in half. It doesn't have to, it can be all shabby and disheveled, it doesnuld matter. That what we're doing now is it's called squaring up the fabric. So I'm gonna put this so that you guys can see it. I'm gonna have my folded edge. This is what would normally be facing me. You're gonna need a ruler that looks something like this. You can even use one that looks like this. They're the same, except the other one has an extra ½ inch mark. Okay, so what you want is you want any of these lines to line up against the bottom. So you don't want it like this, you don't want it like this, you want it exactly perfectly lined up. Doesn't matter how it lines up across the side. You just want to make sure that it's lined up straight on your fold. So when you're looking at the rest of your fabric, if it's crooked over here, let it go. It only needs to be straight for right now at the bottom. Once you have that lined up, I'm just going to do this so I can get my hand in here. You're going to cut it. So you're going to want to put your hands, I normally hold it pressed down like this. If you're left-handed, you're going to have to reverse this. And you're just going to cut this piece off. And you might have to move your hand up as you go. Don't move your ruler, just your hand. Always close your blade. You might cut yourself. So, okay, so get rid of that. Okay, so what you should have now is a straight edge. Now, you're going to pick this up gently so you don't shift anything. You're just going to flip it over. Okay? You still have a straight edge. It's on this side. And the reason we did that is, this is why we did that. You can cut the squares in whatever size you want, especially if you're using this type of ruler. I made mine 4 inches. So now that you've got a nice straight edge here, what you want to do is you want to line up however wide you want your square. For me, if this is 6 inches, if I put the entire ruler down right here and I cut, I'm going to get a 6-inch square. If I go 2 inch, if I take, these are my inch marks, down here, 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 see, I want 4 inches. So I'm going to line that 2-inch mark along the edge, my straight edge. Don't worry so much about the bottom anymore. Now you're really just worried about the straight edge here. Okay, so everything does actually line up really well. And if you notice, there's 2 inches that doesn't have any fabric. That's great, because we don't want a 6-inch square, we want a 4-inch square. So the only thing the ruler is covering, now 4 inches of ruler is covering your fabric. You're going to cut straight up the side. So we're just going to, again, put your hand down. This is lined up here. We already know this is straight. We did that. That's what we did at first. So get your rotary cutter out. And I would definitely use a rotary cutter for this if that's what you're going to do. Okay. Now, this should be 4 inches. You're going to want to spin it around. This is what I do. I'm going to again line up one of my lines at the bottom here just to make sure everything stays straight. So I'm lining up that, I'm using the 15. It doesn't really matter at this point. You're just really doing this for the line. Whoa. So now this is lined up here. We're just going to cut this off. And then again, you're going to gently flip your fabric over. And again, you're going to line it up however wide that you wanted it. Like I said, mine is 4 inches. So I'm going to leave 2 inches of fabric not under the ruler. I'm lining up my 2-inch mark along the straight edge I just created, which also lines up with this line here. And then we're just going to cut. And you have your 4-inch squares. This will work for any size as long as you're doing it within the size of your ruler. So you could do 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches. I guess you could get willy-nilly and do 1 inches. I mean, I don't know why you would want to do that. By the time you put a seam on it, you would have no fabric left. And then basically you just cut until you run out of fabric. And we're cutting 2 at a time, which is the beauty of it. So we're actually making two squares at one time. I really wouldn't try to do anything thicker than that. You may regret that. It may not end so well. So I'm just going to keep going until I get to the end. Now, if you notice, I did this so that I have this folded piece. If you open up your folded piece, you can get one more square out of there. So you just do the same thing you've been doing the whole time. Now, again, I'm more worried about lining up this line than this line. At this point, that's what's important. You already took care of the bottom, so you know that's straight. So now we have 4-inch squares, and that's how I got my 4-inch squares. So this is a pretty neat project to do if you have a lot of scrap fleece. And then what you do now is you just lay out however you want your pattern to be. I would highly recommend that you lay out your pattern before you start sewing, especially if you're doing prints like I did with this, because you know, I don't know, it's just nice to know how to do it. You could use as many different patterns as you choose. The more complex it is, the more complex it is. I mean, you could get really crazy and cut these in half and do triangles, and I would keep it with squares to begin with. The very first quilt I made, I decided I would do triangles. I had never sewn a thing in my life, not a cage liner, not a pillowcase. I had sewn nothing, and I went straight to triangles quilts. It was, you know, whatever. I would not recommend that, but you do whatever you're comfortable with. You can make it as long as you want. I'm going to actually go, I need to turn this. So I'm going to actually go 6 across. I'm just going to keep the pattern really simple because it makes the whole process really simple if you do that. And like I said, you get as complex as you want. When you go down to the next row, you just switch. I personally switch to I start with a different color. So I will probably do it this way until I've started with each of my patterns. So I will have 3 rows that are different, if that makes sense. It will here in a second. So we're just going to keep following our pattern just like this. And there we go. And now I'm going to start with the moons because that's the one I didn't start with. And then I will put celestial here. And then cotton candy. And then moons. And so on and so forth. I think in my last one that I just made over there, I think I did 6 rows. 8 rows. And again, it depends on what you're making. So you want it to be as big as you're making it. You're also going to lose a little bit when you start to sew these together because, I mean, I would do at least a 1/2 inch seam. A 1/4 inch you could probably get away with also. Either way, it's not going to be 4 inches by 4 inches when you're done. So now if you see, we've kind of created a pattern which will come through more the more you repeat it. So if I want to go down further, I'm going to go back. I personally will go back up to, I only have 3 different patterns, so I can only do 3 different designs. So I'm just going to start and repeat my first pattern again. And then I'm going to, I'll repeat each pattern twice to make 6 rows. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so now what you need to do is I would sew each row together. So here's how I do that. I just take these and I turn this upside down and I literally just put them all on top of each other upside down. Just like this. Okay, so now we have our rows all stacked like this. I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew right sides together. So I'm going to sew all 6 of these rows together. All 6 of my rows across together, and then I will sew all of the all of the strips together. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take your first square and you're going to lay your second square right side together. You're going to line up the edges on one side, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam or however big of a seam you want. And then you're going to open it up, and remember we laid these out in order, so put the next one down, line it up. You can clip or pin this if you feel like you have to. That's completely up to you. And we're just going to keep going all the way across. And we're going to do this to all of the rows that we created. So now what you should have is your rows all sewn together like this. I'm just going to push these up here. Actually, yeah, it doesn't matter how you start, but just, I'm going to take and leave this just like this. I'm going to take the row above it. I'm going to put these right sides together, and I'm going to line up my seams. Now, I find it easier to clip the seams first, especially when you're doing it with fleece. So we're just going to clip the seams together, and then I'll go back in. And if you did the same amount of seam allowance for each square, then these should line up pretty well. Cool part about it is it's fleece, and fleece stretches, so worst case scenario you tug it a little, but honestly if you do the same seam allowance on all of them, this really should be pretty lined up. And fleece is a little more giving than cotton. Okay, so now I'm just gonna make sure this is lined up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go across, I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam across here to put these together so that it now will look like this. Then I'm going to attach the next row, the next row, and the next row until they're all attached and look something like this. Everything sewn together, it should look something like this. That's the back. This is the front. So you can do whatever you want with this. If you wanted to make a flat hammock, you would just take a piece of fleece and make a flat hammock just like you would make a flat hammock any other time. If you wanted to make a cuddle cup, you would obviously have to make a whole strip. You could basically do whatever you want. I think I'm going to make a bed with this, actually, because it's the perfect size. This is my bed template, so I don't have to cut a circle again. But basically, I think I'm going to take a piece of solid color fleece and put it right sides together and cut this out and create a bed. That's what I think I'm going to do. And with this one, I think I wanted to make a snuggle sack, but this isn't big enough, and I don't want to make another one. So maybe I'll do a bed. What can I make? Maybe I'll just make a blanket. I don't know, you guys. I have to think a minute. Give me a second. Okay, I made a decision. I'm gonna make a bed out of it. So I have this purple because I think it'll match the cage and stuff that I have in there right now. So I'm just gonna lay this across here like this. Actually, it's the perfect size. I'm gonna get my lovely little template. All right, and we're just gonna trace around the circle so I can cut it out. And I will put a link above on how to make the perfect circle. So you guys, if you want to create this exact circle, I have a tutorial to do that. It's actually very, very easy. If you're one of those people that can like free draw a circle, that's incredible. And I am a little jealous. That's not me. So I don't even attempt it. Making little light marks so I know where to cut. Perfect. All right. So I have my scissors and I have my clips right here because I'm going to clip this as I cut. Now I'm just going to clip it all the way around. Yay! Okay, that's so exciting. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So with the other one I made, I'm actually just gonna make a blanket because I think it's really cute. And I kind of just want it as a blanket. So what I'm gonna do is I took a solid color piece of fleece. I'm just gonna cut out around it. If you had like crib batting or any kind of batting, you could put that in here and make it extra soft. But normally if you do fleece, it's kind of like, it makes it okay, but this fleece is not very thick, but it should be fine. So I'm just gonna sew all the way around this. I'm gonna leave just an opening to flip it right side out. So I'm gonna do what I always do. I just put 2 pins in about 5 inches apart, and I will sew from here all the way around to here, and then I'll flip it right side out and top stitch it. Okay, so what I think I'm gonna do with this one is I'm gonna make it into a hammock. So my straps are cut at about 11 inches so that when these are done, the straps will be about 4.5 inches long, and with the hooks they'll hang about 6 inches from the cage. I'm gonna put 4 straps on this because, and I want them to be across from each other because I think it'll just help it. I'm gonna leave about 1 inch of the strap hanging out. So remember, the hoop of the strap has to face the inside. You can also use grommets if that's something that you have an animal that doesn't do good with straps, just use grommets or use fleece. Although if they eat strapping, they'll probably eat fleece. So you may be better off with grommets because at least they won't eat the metal. Now we have to find any place around the edge, just leave a 5-inch opening so that you can flip it right side out. So like again, I'm gonna mark with my pins. 4 to 5 inch opening. Doesn't really need to be that big. And you're just gonna sew from here all the way around to the other side. Okay, so here's my hammock invention. I don't know that I invented this, but find your opening. You're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna flip this right side out. We'll just have to take our fingers and pull out the edges to make sure they stay round. Well, that actually turned out really cute, I think. I think that's gonna be great. So right now we're gonna do the same thing we just did with the square one. You're just rolling your edges inward, and you wanna try to create the circle shape. It should kind of do it naturally on its own, but you may have to finagle with it on the ends where, like, you know, where the openings are. But this will work. I do this with my cuddle cups all the time, the pads that I include in my cuddle cups. That's just a thread. So we're just gonna clip our opening closed, and like I said, you may have to mess around with it to make it create that round circle shape so that you don't have like a flat square edge, but it is doable, I promise. So you just might have to play with it. And I'm also gonna go around and do the exact same thing that I did, which is to push my edges and clip them so that when I stitch this, it all lines up nice. And see how it's doing that thing? I don't want to top stitch it like this. That looks weird. So I want it to look the way it's supposed to look, where the bottom is the bottom and the top is the top. So I'm just clipping that in place so that when I top stitch, that's what I get. I get it to look exactly the way that I wanted it to. It's so like squishy. It's so soft. I'm so shocked at that. I guess because it's anti-pull fleece. I love it. I'm like, I really like it. I like it a lot. Now we're going to top stitch around this too, because you want to make sure you close this opening up. I'm going to do just a straight stitch. I was considering a decorative stitch, but because it's a hammock, I'm not.
You still sleep in your hammock? You love your hammock? It doesn't match your bedding because I tested it out. You jumped in it. Daddy's sneezing. Did Mama get you down? Here, come on. Oh, come here. There you go. There you go, little dude.